But that's the way it is. We're dealing with the reality of real truth versus perceived truth. And absolute truth is just that. It's something that's absolutely true, right? It's solid on the table. Forgive me, I realized I had my mic muted. So first few times I wasn't saying anything. God bless you. Um, so we got these difference between relative truth and real truth. And that's the difference is absolute truth is solid. It's uncompromised. It doesn't budge. You can't compromise with it. You simply accept it or reject it. When you think of truth as relative, then any argument affects your truth. Everything becomes unstable. So your concept in embracing an absolute truth brings stability into your life. If your concept is that truth is relative or affected by situations and circumstances, then you're going to end up unstable in your life. So in order to be stable, you must embrace absolute truth, not relative truth. And that gives us the arguments we have in our cultures. For instance, the battle with traditional Christianity, which is Bible based, which involves a solid truth, right? And the new form of Christianity, which is based in relative truth. The two concepts are totally different. They're actually two different religions, but they both call themselves Christianity. One says anything goes, because the truth is relative to who you are and where you're living. Um, the traditional Christianity says, hey, God, the maker of the universe, the Lord of lords, the King of kings, the great I am, the one who sits upon the throne, right? He lays out the rules by which we have to live by in order to be blessed, in order to prosper. He sets all that, and all we have to do is accept and walk in agreement with him, right? It's totally different concepts. That's why we got in our culture this concept, this battle between absolute truth and relative truth, right? Black and white thinking and gray thinking. And that's what it boils down to. Um, but black and white thinking is pretty much solid or stable. Um, I go and reach out to a girl and we become boyfriend or girlfriend. You either are my girl or you're not, right? I'm not interested in dating a girl that's kind of says she's mine and she's with everybody else and ignoring me. With that truth, we're never going to end up being relatives, you know? But the truth is, are you committed to me? Am I yours? Is there anyone else? You can't be my girlfriend and everybody else's girlfriend at the same time. That's the difference between absolute truth and relative truth. For instance, you go out to the sky, right? You see a blue sky, right? You get in over the inside, and the guy behind the TV is saying, well, there's a beautiful red sky out there. And you're like, something's wrong here. So you go down there, look at the blue sky. And here's the crazy part. People who think in terms of absolute truth would look at that and says, that guy's crazy. I can see it. The sky's blue, right? The guys who deal with relative thought will go like, how did I perceive the sky, the blue sky, the red sky is blue? It must be red because he says it red and he's educated. He's on the news. He knows what's going on. He's reporting facts. So I'm seeing something that's actually red, which how did I mistake that for that? That's red. That's not blue. It's different. Because whether you think concerning truth as absolute or relative actually affects your life. If you consider things in terms of absolute truth, you will have a stable life. Because everything becomes black and white, either right or wrong, good or bad. Life becomes simple. And that's where wisdom is. Wisdom makes complicated things simple. It's foolishness that makes simple things complicated. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it always will be. Um, and it's the way it is. I mean, even with the sexes, I mean, black and white truth says there's a male and female, right? Because you got biology. You look at them, you know they're different. Relative truth says there's a whole smorgasbord, a panorama of different sexes, which is very confusing, extremely confusing. So the question is, what you going to believe? The absolute truth or relative truth? What is it to you? How do you define what is true? And you see that difference a whole lot in the media, because the media is not given absolute truth. Because if they did, they would not be moving on issues the way they do. They keep on changing or flip flopping. That's not absolute truth. That's relative truth, which is a lie. And that's the one thing you got to think of. Is relative truth actual truth, or is relative truth a lie? And is absolute truth the only truth there is? I believe that absolute truth is the only truth it is. That's what you look for. You're looking for something solid that doesn't change. It is stable, right? But this relative truth leads into confusion. You know a tree by the fruits. Clear cut and simple. You will know a tree by its fruits. A good tree produces good fruit, and a bad tree produces bad fruit. So we'll look at this. What does absolute truth, or the concept of absolute truth, builds in your life? Stability. Always know where you stand, always know where you're going. You do an action, you know you pay a penalty. You're accountable for your own actions. Therefore, you think in terms of doing those actions which are more profitable and avoid those actions which are not. You think things out when you consider in terms of absolute truth. Relative truth, there is actually no right and wrong. If you're thinking in terms of truth only relative, you won't think, okay, oh, wait, this guy did this, but why did he do this? It doesn't matter why he did something wrong, right? And you see this all the time, like some of the issues that come about when you see somebody commit a mass killing, right? Um, Simple. Somebody kills. The reason he wanted to kill because he hated the people. He wanted them dead. That's why people go on mass killings. They think these people can't stand them, and the world would be better off if they're gone. So what does the psychiatric ward do? They're thinking in terms of truth is relevant. So they're talking, why did he do it? Doesn't matter. The reason why he did it doesn't change the fact that they're all dead. Now we go into the absolute truth of justice, giving unto each man as they rightfully deserve. Good or bad. It's administration. Justice is built on absolute truth. There's nothing relative about justice. You either did it or you didn't do it. There may be varying degrees of punishment, but it doesn't change the fact that you either did the crime or you didn't do the crime. It's based on absolute truth. Because without the absolute truth, you can't have justice. So there has to be absolutes in your life, right? You take a life, you pay a penalty. You save a life, you get a blessing. But we have a culture that pushes and tries to present truth as relative, so you don't believe anything. You can't take a stand on it. But it's not that way. Don't give in to that stuff. You need absolute truth. And that's why science confuses everybody. There's no absolute truth in science. Science is all relative truth. I mean, one day, 1 year, they're going to say that cholesterol is good for you. Then they'll come out with another study saying cholesterol is bad for you. Right? They'll say you need an extra portion of milk each day because that's healthy. Then they'll do another study says you need to cut back a portion of milk because that's unhealthy. But it keeps on evolving. It's never stable. It's like that with medicine, um, sciences of any sorts. There's no stability in it because it's constantly changing. That's why you can't rely on the science. Science is not stable. Science doesn't seek out absolute truth. Science thinks of truth as relative, or the scientific community. It wasn't always like that. There was a time in the culture not too long ago when the science pursued absolute truth. They considered the Bible as an absolute truth, and whatever they found on science had to agree with the Bible, right? And you see that happening within the government. You have to take this, or else there's no other cause, right? They're trying to present an absolute truth, but they're doing it in light of a relative truth. Because you don't know what's going to happen in your body unless you don't know what effect a substance is going to have in your body until it actually comes in. Let's face it. You can do all the speculation, all the studies, but every individual body is different. Right? It's the truth. Right? No two snowflakes are alike. Right? That's the truth. Right? I look in terms of right and wrong, truth and lie. Are you telling me the truth? Then we can walk together. He's lying to you. Then he's out of here. It's that clear cut. And that's the way you got to learn to live your life in terms of absolutes. Because as you're thinking in terms of absolutes, you have a stable life. Right? A lot of the guys, the conflicts I've had is people that haven't had a concept of stable truth. So anybody can turn them any way they want to. Concept considering in terms of absolute truth strengthens you that you can't be manipulated. Those that think in terms of truth as irrelevant, relative, always have somebody getting over on them. Right? That's one of the reasons that I talk to people. Tell them something true, they embrace it, and they can see it as soon as I tell them. Right? Come back an hour later, and they fell away from that truth, and they're walking against it. Why? Because they think in terms of truth is relative. Okay, well, that truth that I gave them was relative for that moment. And then something else within 30 seconds, the entire circumstances change. It's no longer relevant anymore. Now they're going for another truth. It's confusing. Right? So you want stability, you have to have an absolute truth. Right? And that's the way you got to learn to live your life. You can't live your life going every which way, every wind of doctrine. You have to be anchored down. That's why Jesus said, those who hear my teachings and do them shall have their house built on a firm foundation. And when the storms of life come, that house shall not fall. Be like it's built upon a rock. And that's the way it is when you build your life on absolute truth. It will not be shaken. Or you won't be shaken. See that with Job. Job had everything taken away from him. But Job was stable from the beginning of the book to the end. Maybe he wobbled a little bit at the very end of the story, but he didn't fall. And he was facing extremely severe circumstances. Why was he able to stay? He thought in terms of absolute truth. And it saved you. You know what embracing absolute truth does, it protects you from the lie. Once you embrace truth as absolute, it's a lot more difficult for anybody to get a lie past you. It's stable. Relative truth, anybody can get anything past you at any time. Relative truth, you think in terms of truth as relative, not having any absolutes. People can get over and lead you wherever they want you to go. And we see the Constitution based on absolute truth. We hold these truths to be self evident that all men are created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Self evident. These are truths. They have rights God has given them, and they cannot be taken away because they're given out by God. That's an absolute truth. And one of the reasons that the nation was stable for a long time, because that was considered absolute. No hard bars, don't question it. Every man has rights given out by God, and they were defined. You go away from that, nobody has any rights. You can do to you whatever you please. That's not good. That's relative truth. The truth is what I tell you it is. That's not right. So the question is, what are you going to embrace? Are you going to embrace truth as absolute, or truth as relevant? Right? That's the way the Pharisees were. The Pharisees considered truth as relevant. Right? They believed the Torah until something came up to them that didn't profit them. And they considered, hey, it may be good in our best benefits if we put this aside and go another way. Right? That's why Christ rebuked him. He said, hey, you made the law of God void through your traditions. They changed it. See, absolute truth is highly resisted. Absolute truth is never popular. Because men want to do what they want to do, and the truth actually gets in the way most of the time. That's why God says all men are liars and God alone is true. God never has any interior motives. That's why you can seek the truth from God, and that truth you get from God is absolute. Right? The truth you get from man is relative. He lies, even when he's not considering his lying. Right? But that's what you consider. What are you going to follow? The absolute truth or the relative truth that the culture is pushing at this point? That's why everything's become so unstable. I mean, he's in a video of female athletes competing against male athletes. It's very humiliating. The males run all over them. The absolute truth is men are physically superior. They're stronger, they're faster, they have more stamina. In sports, head-to-head combat, the absolute truth is the physical limitations. They are proven by science. There's no discriminating against one sex or the other. But physically, men are more equipped for war, for the fight. Thing is, we have that because we had our truth distorted by Hollywood. We're seeing all these images of these bad women and kicking butts. And we see that enough in front of our faces, we actually think that's reality. It's not. It's not. I remember when they lowered the physical standards for police here in the city. I mean, you get intimidated by the 6-foot cop with all these muscles, and you're not going to mess with him. Says, yes, sir. Right? And then they lowered the standard. Now you got a 5'2" female cop with a squeaky voice that's afraid of everything. It's not actually relative. See, truth is absolute, and that's where you got to consider truth as absolute. So one thing, you put things to the test, it comes out, you grab hold of it. That's true. That's absolute. Right? What they're calling truth, relative truth, is actually people's opinions. And there's a difference there. Because every man sees a way that's right onto themselves, and it's destructive. Everybody has done this. Okay, you find something, did it, it looked good, bam, you paid the price for it because it looked good to you. But when you started stepping into that way, you realized this wasn't good for you. Human perception is distorted. That's why you need to have absolute truth, because you cannot rely on human perception. Because human perception is distorted by selfishness. Selfish desires distorts human perceptions the way it's always been for ages. Right? Selfish desires. That's why man has trouble seeing absolute truth. Yeah, I know this is right and this is good for me, but I feel that it would be in my best interest to go another way. It's the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, and the pride of life. Right? That's what relative truth caters to. The lust of the flesh, the pride of life. Whatever looks good, tastes good, feels good, good and make you wise. That's the same situation that ended up in the garden. That's what Eve was tempted with. All right? Because here's an aspect of absolute truth. Adam and Eve were created in the image of God from the get-go, right? That was an absolute truth, right? The devil tempted Eve. As soon as you eat this fruit, you're going to become like God. She was already like God. She rejected the absolute truth of the way she was created. She was created like God already. If she would have stood on that, the book would have been one, the entire book would have been one chapter. Hey, wait a minute. I'm already like God. He created me like that. Get out of here. You'll all be in paradise right now. If she just took to the one absolute truth, that she was created by God in the image of God. And we create that as an absolute image, and that's an absolute. We are created in the image of God. We're created to be like God. We're created to love like God. We're created to be generous like God. We're created to be merciful like God. We're created to follow all his attributes. That's the way we're designed to do. That's why even the most wicked people, when they do something good and selfless, they feel good. Because at that very moment, they're actually operating the way they were created to operate. So the trouble that we're in is because of a relative truth. The devil is good at presenting relative truth at the expense of you rejecting absolute truth. Because once you stick as truth as absolute, you stand by it. So at Meshach, well, the Hebrew boys that were thrown in the furnace, Meshach, Meshach, and Abednego. Sometimes I get the names wrong, but you know what I'm talking about, right? The absolute truth is that this was bound down to another idol was wrong before God. That was an absolute truth that they were not willing to surrender. And you're going to take right stands, you have to have absolutes. That's why I think the rulers or those that be are pushing relative truth, because they can control people through relative truth. Once people start thinking in terms of absolute truth, now standards come into play. There's no standards in relative truth. That's why it's so unstable. But you're thinking in terms of absolute truth, you got standards. right? When I was first saved, became a Christian, um, the one thing that kept on coming after me all over the place was an absolute truth. Do not take another man's wife, for God himself will avenge all such sins. I was hearing that all over the place, right? I had this beautiful girl I was going to lunch with. I was working at the Kmart. She was in the photo studio, and we had a great time at lunch, right? One day she mentioned her husband, which I didn't know about.
The time is 6:00 p.m.
And we started talking. I'm like, and the talk started getting a little bit romantic before that. I said, um, what are you interested in me? Well, he's really bad to me, and I want to replace him. He picked me to replace him. It was wrong. Do not take another man's wife. God will avenge such sins. I couldn't do it. So I gave her marriage advice. Actually prayed for wisdom and counseled her. She applied it and put her marriage back together. It totally turned around. So instead of being in that marriage that she wasn't happy with, she was actually had a happy marriage. The entire relationship was restored because I stood on an absolute truth. That happened one more time, and the second time with a girl from the photo booth, she was actually more beautiful than the first girl. Right? It was an absolute truth. Same thing, her marriage. I gave her marriage advice, and her marriage took off after that. Then I started getting jealous. I said, Lord, I want somebody. I started getting mad. But then the absolute truth was tested. When someone that I was madly in love with come back, that I always wanted, and she was married to somebody else. That's when your commitment to the absolute truth goes to the test. Right? My desire, my urges was to have that one woman. But the truth is, it was somebody else's wife. It wasn't mine. It was given to somebody else. I should not take it. I sent her back to her husband. Didn't touch her. Because the state of marriage between man and God is a sacred thing. The marriage between a man and a woman is a sacred thing. It reflects God's relationship to his church. That's why God takes it so seriously. And what I did, I sent her back. That marriage, again, was saved. And it prospered to this day because I would not take another man's wife. The standard of the absolute truth protected these three marriages. Of course, I'm still single, but that's okay. That's okay. I mean, I'd rather be single and fulfilled than married and miserable. It's an absolute truth, which is better. Marriage isn't for everybody. It is not. And Jesus was quite frank. He said, marriage is not for everybody. Not everybody's supposed to be married for different reasons, but having to be married is not an absolute truth. It's a good thing. Don't get me wrong, it is a good thing, but it's not an absolute truth. But you have to keep your life in line with absolute truth. All right? For instance, if I go into the water and I can't swim, the absolute truth there is I die. I drown. Right? And you see it with Andy Kaufman. He tried to portray himself as a wrestler because he kept on wrestling women. And that relative truth, because he was able to beat up women, he thought he was a great wrestler. So he got big headed, believed he was an actual wrestler, and fought a man. That didn't go too well with him. He got hit with some absolute truth that he wasn't a wrestler the hard way. And you see that a lot with entertainment. And I'm a musician, I'm a performer. And I have to fight all the time to stay in the realms of absolute truth. Because entertainment deals with fantasies. It does. I mean, you're fantasizing, you're coming up with presenting fantasy worlds that and the struggle is to still remain in this world, in reality. That's why I always stay on the outside of the arts. I mean, I was an accomplished painter, artist. I was very highly regarded. I was in the arts magazines in my teenage years, preteen years. I already had write-ups by prestigious art magazines, literature. But I always stayed on the outside because I wanted something more than what they gave. I didn't want to get caught in that world of fantasy. And I'm not telling you on the outside, I was on the inside. If you let the creative urge get you delve too far into it, you can lose your hold on reality. That's why you got to grab on the absolute truth, because absolute truth keeps you from going into total fantasy. And I know that from my experience. I'll tell you, come back, because I've been in the arts, I've been in music, video production, even dealt with a few talent agencies. They're not firing in all reality. They fall into the fantasy world. They fall into the world of non-absolute, so they're getting pushed around by every wind and doctrine. That's why you hear celebrities, for instance, give their opinion on this, their opinion on that, push political agendas, but they're doing it from a profession that deals with fantasy. You need somebody that can hit hard truth and listen to them. Um, Not to mention, I don't know any of these. They're paid to say certain things, or they won't have a job. It's another aspect about performers. They get paid to endorse stuff. That's why you got to research. You can't take the word. Um, and there's one article, well, pastor I had a beef with. I'm going to tell you where it is. He was presenting a political figure and presenting his truth as a Christian. Then you realize his life and his stance, he really didn't honor God at all. He put up a front in order to get votes. And most Christians will fall for the front because they're not looking for the fruit. Don't accept anyone because they say they're a Christian. They come up with a lot of Christian talk because a lot of stuff you're hearing is not true. That's why you got to grab on to absolute truth. Absolute truth will hold you through. Truth isn't relative, right? It isn't relative. It's an absolute thing. It's a thing you fall and before you. You either allow it to help you on your journey or you trip over it and break your neck. And you have a choice. Nobody can force truth on you. You got a choice. Receive it or reject it. But that doesn't change the fact that it's true. I mean, my mother, she had a way of seeing the truth, especially with relationships between her sons and girls. And I realized this years later that girls give off physical gestures and innuendos that other girls pick up, but guys can't. In the same way with guys, guys can pick up things from guys that women can't, right? And my mom met a girl and said, Mike, dump her. She's going to break your heart. Didn't listen to her. Years later, it happened. Mom was right. Because mom was able to see a truth, an absolute truth that I wasn't able to see. But because of my desire, I didn't want to believe it. and I got burned. That's why parents are in your life, especially mothers. I mean, if you're a young person and you want a stable relationship, I'm going to tell you the way it is. Get your parents involved. Get their opinion. If you're a guy, get the opinion of your mother, because your mother is not going to be fooled by a girl, because she is a girl. If you're a girl, get the opinion from your dad, because your dad ain't going to be sweet talked like by a guy the way your mom can. That's why it's better to have both parents. It's a stable home life. The absolute truth is, you need both of them. I couldn't imagine what life would have been without mom and dad. And I see the effect of one parent homes. It's horrible. We have men grown up not learning how to be men. They have to learn it from the streets. And what you learn from the street is a fantasy world. That has nothing to do with being a man. Those street dealers and drug dealers, I don't think they seriously have a desire to provide for the women, the children, the way they should. If they did, they would be going straight. They would be protecting their interest. They probably know that they should. Doesn't mean that they actually do. They're not men. Men are marked by seeking peace, not war. Those are true men that seek out peace. They don't use violence except as a last resort. Those are true men. Willing to negotiate. A true man always considers that he could be wrong, because he knows he doesn't have all the answers. So he's willing to listen. And when you're looking for absolute truth, it's a kicker. Let it be tested. Right? Because the truth always stands up. Scrutiny. A lie never does, but the truth does. So you seek out the absolute truth, embrace it, and it will strengthen your life if you learn to think in absolutes. Kept me out of a lot of trouble as I gone through my life. I mean, especially when dealing with agencies. Yeah, they're not my family. They try to make you think you're your family in order to manipulate you, in order to do what they want you to do. Your family is your family. They're business associates. It's a different relationship. Don't let them play on your emotions. It's an absolute truth is they're not your family. They're business associates, and it's different. That's the way you don't fall for the nonsense going on with agencies. Don't let them get into that role, because that's a lie. They're not your family. They're business associates. And that's the way you got to take it. Because once you start thinking in terms of them as family, now your emotions end up in a place where they shouldn't be. Right? So you got to discern absolute truth. Your family, you got to identify as your family. That's absolute. Those not in your family are not in your family. That's absolute too. And that's something that gets distorted. And people can play you because they play off of that desire for family. That's why the weak, those that have been rejected by their families, are so easily preyed by evil. Because they have the desire to be in part of the family unit. They have the desire to be part of that love. If you never had it, you're below prey to it. Right? Because absolute truth is founded on the foundation of love. It really is. And a sad case because many seek out absolute truth and never find it. I mean, John Lennon was a truth seeker, and I hope and pray he found the truth before he died. He grew, and he was looking for the truth, but did he find it? It's hard to find it in the entertainment industry. Um, and that's the way you got to be. So, you guys, thank you for that. Thank you for the thumbs up. God bless you. I don't know who did it, but bless you. If my podcast has blessed you, please follow me. I'm going to be doing this every Saturday at 5:30. I'm not going to be doing this all this time because I'm actually a musician and an artist. I'm going to be doing streams like that, but this I like because I get to talk to people through different platforms. And on the stage, you never get to know anybody. You get to see what they're presenting. And I'm a real person, desires and opinions and thoughts. And I'm not a cardboard cutout. I'm in entertainment, but I'm outside the entertainment system. I believe in being real, keeping it real, you know? And that's what the real deal truth is about. So please, guys, follow me, subscribe to me. And if there's any subject you want us to talk about, drop me a line. I mean, it's not about me just talking, it's about me serving. We'll go on a journey together, we'll find out the truth together. And that's the way it is. So I'm Mike, aka Prophet Song. If you want to follow this again, you can download 17 Live app because I'll be doing this again at 8 o'clock on that stream. It'll be a different type of stream if I get enough people there to want to do it. I got my guitar ready in case I have to play. I mean, it's nothing set, but you can follow me. And I'd love to hear from you. So God bless you. Support me. And we're going to go on this journey together. We're going to find the truth. We're going to live by it. I'm going to be blessed by it. God bless you. Mike A.K. Prophet Song out.